Gloria, you don't need to come. This party is for important people. I froze in the middle of my own backyard, where my son Benjamin was throwing a housewarming party. It was the house I had paid 80% down on, but I wasn't invited? My daughter-in-law, Carrie, said it straight to my face in front of her side of the family. Everyone laughed and chatted, clinking champagne glasses up on the deck, while I stood below like a housekeeper who happened to wander by, my head spinning over the words, "party for important people." That night, I started a plan no one would see coming. As I walked out of the yard, still holding the small bag I thought I'd need if they asked me to stay for dinner, I said nothing. I just nodded slightly at one of Carrie's relatives, laughing with a drink in his hand. He didn't recognize me or pretended not to. I opened my car door, buckled my seatbelt, and sat there for a few minutes. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't shaking. Strange. I'd been waiting for this moment for years, not to be humiliated, but to see everything with painful clarity. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't need music to fill the space in my head. I needed the sound of the engine, the tires rolling over the road steady and clear, to remind myself I still controlled something. I had pictured this housewarming so many times. I'd arrive early, help Carrie set the tables like I always did. I'd bring the special salad Benjamin had loved since he was little. Carrie would thank me with a polite hug, and I'd tell myself, at least she still remembers me. Then we'd take a family photo under the big oak in the backyard, the one I planted myself 3 years before selling my old house to give them money for this one. But nothing I imagined happened. I wasn't part of the plan. I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't in the family. When I got home, I dropped my purse on the chair and didn't turn on the lights. The house sat in the soft orange glow of a setting Sunday. I sank into the armchair in the corner of the living room where I usually embroider or read the morning paper, and stared out the window. I didn't cry, not a single tear. I think I'd already cried myself dry like the times before when Carrie said I called a little too much and wore her. When Benjamin started replying to my texts with emojis instead of words. When I sent money to fix the car and got nothing back but a transfer successful notification. I'm not someone who angers easily. I don't hold grudges either. But there's a kind of wound that won't heal, not because it's too deep, but because the person who caused it keeps scratching at it every day with indifference. I stood up and walked to the old file cabinet in my office. That dark brown wooden cabinet is where I keep everything from utility bills, letters from the 80s, to receipts I've saved out of habit from my accounting days. I pulled out a folder labeled Family, Benjamin and Carrie. I'd even used a pink sticky tab to make it easy to find. Careful, as if I were preparing a financial report for a company I loved, I flipped through each page. Home repair bill, $2,800. Spanish classes for my granddaughter Olivia, $1,200. A sofa set for Benjamin's old apartment, $1,700. A bank loan I co-signed, $15,000. And those were only the ones I still had on paper. The quick transfers, the times I handed over a little cash to help them get through the month, the birthday gifts for Carrie so Benjamin wouldn't feel awkward. Those weren't on any ledger. They lived only in my memory and my slowly eroding pride. I closed the folder. Something clicked in my mind. I took out a blank notebook and started writing the name of each expense, the date, the reason, who asked, my reaction. Each line I wrote felt like a pin popping a balloon. The balloon of my illusion that I was the perfect mother, the devoted grandmother, the sweet mother-in-law. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would be the same again.
I brewed a cup of chamomile tea and sat on the front porch. Night had fallen. The autumn breeze was gentle. Yellow leaves rode each gust, needing no permission, no invitation. I sat there thinking about Thomas, my husband. If he were alive, he'd be furious. But he'd also smile and say, "Gloria, it's time you lived for you."
The faint bitterness touched my tongue. I didn't feel as bitter as earlier. I felt clear. That night, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't scroll Facebook to see who had posted photos from the housewarming. I just lay in bed, eyes open to the ceiling, and asked myself, if I stop paying, will I still be called Mom? I didn't know the answer, but I knew I was about to find out. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Autumn sunlight slipped through the curtains, laying a pale gold over a room so quiet I could hear the ticking clock. I lay still for a moment, feeling like my body had been through a storm while my mind was strangely calm. I went to the kitchen and brewed a pot of black coffee. The smell filled the house, taking me back to younger mornings when I'd gulp a sip and rush to the office. Back then, I was an accountant at a small firm. I was used to numbers, spreadsheets, neat columns of addition, subtraction, and totals. Maybe that's why I never dropped the habit of keeping bills, statements, and paperwork. Today, that boring habit turned into my anchor. I set my hot coffee on the table and opened my laptop. The screen lit up to a string of bank emails I never really read. I clicked Saved Accounts and started downloading statements. The lines appeared cold and exact. February of last year sent Benjamin $1,200 as a car deposit. May of the same year, $3,000 for Carrie to invest in more salon equipment. November, $850 for Olivia's winter tuition. The granddaughter I've never held because Carrie doesn't like the smell of ointment on old people. Each amount brought back a memory. I remembered the night Benjamin called, voice tight with worry. "Mom, my car's down. I need a replacement now. I can't get to work without a car." I went straight to the bank without thinking. The word need always moved me. Or when Carrie sat across from me at a cafe, eyes glossy. "Mom, if I don't get more capital, the salon will close." I emptied the emergency fund from my account and handed it to her. I believed I was saving a whole family. I scrolled on. The numbers kept coming, steady and cold. I grabbed my notebook and began logging, not for anyone else, just for me. This month, $2,000. Next month, $1,500. Another urgent $4,000. As my pen moved across the page, I noticed my hand tremble a little, not from age, but from anger. For years, I'd turned myself into an ATM with a heart. I paused, took a long breath, then totaled it all. The number hit me hard. $47,600. $47,600. That's what I'd given in 5 years, not counting cash in envelopes, gifts, or the times I paid the electric and water bills for them. $47,600. I read it over and over like I was staring at a sentence handed down over my head. I stood and paced the living room. My eyes landed on an old photo on the wall. Benjamin's high school graduation, and Thomas and I on either side, him in the middle, blue gown, diploma in hand. His smile was bright. I remember Thomas whispering in my ear, "See, every hardship was worth it." If he were alive, what would he... I think seeing our only son treat me like an outsider. I went back to the table and looked at the notebook. The numbers sat there in straight lines like a row of witnesses that couldn't be cross-examined.
For the first time, I wasn't seeing them as a loving mother would, but as an accountant would. Clear, transparent, and absurd. My phone buzzed. I flinched. Carrie's name lit the screen. I let it ring. A text followed right after. "Mom, I'm just checking on your health. Call me when you're free." I laughed out loud. All these years, Carrie never called just to check on me. There was always a reason beneath it. Rent, credit cards, tuition, new equipment. Checking on your health was a thin curtain over a bottomless hole. I didn't call back. I closed the laptop, folded the notebook, and put it in the drawer. But in my head, that number kept echoing, 47,600. That afternoon, I went to the nearby grocery store. I carried a small basket and picked up a few things: milk, eggs, bread, some greens. The total was under $30. I paid, tucked the receipt into my wallet, and suddenly found it funny. I'm the kind of person who keeps a receipt for eggs, yet I'd let tens of thousands slip away without ever asking for it. Thank you? Back home, I put the groceries away and sat in the armchair. For the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt angry. Angry at my own leniency. Angry that I'd let motherly love be turned into a one-way contract. I opened my phone and scrolled through old messages. From Benjamin. "Mom, we're in a bind. Can you loan me some money?" From Carrie. "Mom, rent is late this week. Can you help?" Every one of them the same. Short, direct, with no small talk. Reading them, I felt like a customer service rep on call to fix their issues. That night, I opened the notebook again and wrote one last line at the bottom. "I'm not a mother anymore. I'm the family bank. And starting today, this bank is closed." When I shut the notebook, I felt a new current move through my chest. Lighter, but colder. I knew the next step wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I'd crossed the hardest threshold, facing the truth. I turned off the living room lights and headed to my bedroom. In the dark, I heard the wind whistle past the window. I pulled up the covers and closed my eyes. No longer a mother waiting for a thank you text, I slept like a soldier, ready for a new fight. The next morning, I went to the bank. The room was wide and bright, sunlight pouring through big panes of glass on the glossy tile. I'd sat here dozens of times before, but this time everything was different. No more rushing to sign transfers for Benjamin, no more scanning my balance to make it work. Today, I came to end it. Ray, the longtime account manager, smiled when he saw me. He knew me well enough not to need an appointment reminder to guess why I was there. But when I sat down and set my thick notebook on the desk, his smile faltered. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitman," he said in that warm baritone. "How can I help you today?" I took a deep breath. "Rye, I want to cancel all automatic transfers to Benjamin and Carrie. And I want to set up a new account, separate, that no one knows about but me." He looked up, studying me. His eyes brightened, surprised, but as if he'd expected this. "Are you sure? For 5 straight years, those transfers have been like clockwork. You've never missed one." I gave a small wry smile. "That's exactly why I'm here today." Ray typed quickly, the screen glowing. He printed out a thick stack and slid it over. "These are the statements for the past 5 years. Do you want to look them over one last time?" I opened them. The numbers lined up cold and personal. Each amount I'd given stared back like an indictment. $1,200, $3,000, $850, $4,000, an endless list. I ran my hand over the page, not to reread, but to feel it. This was the evidence, the answer to every sleepless night I spent asking where I went wrong. I wasn't wrong to love, but I was wrong to turn love into an endless financial duty. Rye, I said softly, do you remember when I rushed in to withdraw $5,000 for Benjamin? You asked if I was sure, and I laughed and said it was for family. He nodded. I remember. I worried about you then, but you seemed determined. I closed my eyes for a moment. Today, I'm more determined, but this time, it's for me. I signed the cancellation form. My hand was steady, not shaking. Ray closed the file and carefully slid it into a plastic folder. All set, Mrs. Gloria. From now on, no one can touch your accounts unless you agree. I also opened a new savings account for you, and only you know the password. I strongly recommend you don't share it with anyone, including family. I smiled. Don't worry, I've learned a very expensive lesson. When I stepped out of the bank, the sun hit the pavement head on. I felt like I had just put down a burden so heavy that my shoulders suddenly felt light. All these years, every visit here meant watching my balance drain. Today, I walked out believing my money truly belongs to me. That afternoon, my phone rang nonstop. First, it was Benjamin. I let it ring. Then Carrie called. I stayed silent. After that, a stream of texts popped up. Mom, I don't see the transfer. Did you forget? Mom, we need money for the credit card bill this week. Text me back. Mom, please don't do this to us. You know we rely on you. I read each line but didn't answer. For the first time, I let the phone fall quiet. No explanations, no excuses, no promises. That evening, I took out the statements and read them again, like a little farewell ritual. I drew a red line through each item and whispered, enough, no more. It felt like unhooking one chain after another that had bound me for years. I remembered the time I paid for a new air conditioner for their apartment. Carrie said, "You're so kind. Without you, we wouldn't know what to do." Those sweet words once made me feel proud, but now I see they were just a way to tie me to an endless loop. Every time they praised my generosity, they were really hinting for more, and I foolishly mistook that for love. That night, I sat by the living room window, watching the streetlights spill in. I wrote one last line in my notebook. The Bank of Gloria Whitman is officially closed permanently. I closed the notebook and set it on the table. This time, I wasn't writing just for myself, but for the future. If I ever feel weak, I'll open it and read those cold numbers to remember how many years, how much money, and how much trust I poured into one-sided love. When the clock struck 10, I turned off every light. The house fell into quiet, but inside me there was no emptiness anymore, only resolve. I don't know how Benjamin and Carrie will react tomorrow when they realize the money no longer flows into their pockets. But I know one thing for sure. I'm ready for the fight. And this time, I won't back down. The next morning, I had just poured a cup of coffee when the phone rang. Car's name lit up the screen. I stared at it and didn't rush to answer. The ringing dragged on like someone pounding on the door of my small house. Finally, I picked up. Car's voice was tearful. "Mom, the credit card got declined. The house is about to be foreclosed. We thought you forgot the transfer." I took a sip of coffee, let the heat spread across the roof of my mouth, and answered slowly. "I didn't forget. Kari, I'm choosing not to send it anymore." There was a few seconds of silence. Then she burst out. "You can't do that. We rely on you. You know that." I ended the call. I didn't need to hear more. My hand still rested lightly on the mug. My heart beat strangely calm. Not even 10 minutes later, Benjamin called. His voice wasn't soft like Kara's. It was blunt and harsh. "Mom, what's going on? I just checked the account. No money came in. You know, we have a loan payment due this week, right?" I closed my eyes and pictured his little face from years ago when he used to throw his arms around my neck after being picked on at school. Now, that accusing tone had no warmth at all. I said simply, "I know, and I've decided to stop." He shouted, "What's wrong with you? Who's gotten in your head? Don't let people feed you weird ideas." I stayed quiet for a few seconds, then hung up. The phone kept buzzing after that, but I ignored it. In the afternoon, I opened the windows and let the cool air in. I heard footsteps on the porch. I looked out. Kara stood there, hair a mess, eyes red. She hurried over and clutched my arm. "Mom, please don't do this. If we lose the house, Olivia will have to switch schools. She's still little. She needs stability. You're her grandma. Don't you think about her?" I looked her straight in the eyes. For a brief moment, my heart pinched at my granddaughter's name, but then I remembered that for years I hadn't been allowed to hold her even once. Kara always had an excuse.
"She's sleeping. She's studying. She's worried about germs." I pulled my arm free and spoke low but firm. "Carrie, I thought about Olivia more than anyone, but what you just said isn't about her. It's about the money you want me to keep paying." Carrie's face shifted, anger flashing in her eyes. The tears dried up instantly. She spun around and strode toward the car, tossing back, "You'll regret this." I stood there watching the car leave the driveway. I didn't feel shaky, just a new sensation, self-possession. That night, I wrote a line in my notebook. Today, for the first time in years, I wasn't bullied by tears or scolding. I closed the notebook and smiled to myself. The next day, Benjamin showed up. He didn't knock. He just stood blocking the walkway, jaw tight. "Mom, we need to talk." I opened the door but didn't invite him in. I stood in the doorway between two worlds, the home I protect inside and outside. The son who treats me like a wallet. He glared at me. "We can't live without your support. I'm working hard. Carrie is too. You know how expensive everything is now." I cut in. "You're 35, Benjamin. At your age, your father supported a whole family and bought our first house without help. You're still leaning on your elderly mother?" He frowned, voice stiffening. "You make it sound like we've never cared about you. You think all we care about is money?" I answered softly, each word heavy as stone. "Tell me, when was the last time you called just to ask how I'm doing?" Benjamin went silent, his lips pressed tight, eyes looking away. I knew he had no answer. Finally, he left without a goodbye. I closed the door. The bitterness was there, but I didn't collapse. I understood that with every refusal, I was pulling myself a little farther out of the chains. For the next 3 days, my phone almost never stopped ringing. When no one picked up, they left messages. It was the same themes over and over. Rent, credit card debt, bank loans. I read them but didn't reply. Instead, I took a walk around the neighborhood. I stopped by the bakery and bought a warm loaf of bread as a treat. The clerk greeted me with a friendly smile and asked which jam I liked. I felt a sudden pang. How long had it been since I had a simple conversation, not about money? I brought the bread home, ate it alone at the kitchen table, savoring each bite and thinking, maybe this is what freedom really feels like. That night, a long text came in from Carrie. "Mom, I'm sorry if I said anything that upset you, but we're really in a tough spot. If you don't help, we'll lose everything. I know you don't want your granddaughter to suffer." I read it over and over. The wording sounded gentle, but I recognized the familiar scent of manipulation. They weren't asking out of love. They were demanding out of fear of losing their only source of money. I set the phone down without replying. I told myself, in the past, a message like this would have sent me running to the bank. Now I just feel relieved that I've learned to stand firm. On Sunday morning, I got up early and went to church. I've gone regularly for years, but my mind was always tangled with my kids' money issues. Today, I sat still and listened to the sermon on forgiveness.
The pastor said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse. Forgiveness is when you let the burden fall off your shoulders and free your soul." I sat there with tears streaming, unable to stop. Not for Benjamin or Carrie, for myself, the woman who let motherhood become chains for so many years. That afternoon, Carrie called again. Her voice wasn't soft this time, it was sharp. "If you don't send money, we'll have to take action. Don't blame us." I pressed end. My heart didn't flutter like before. I knew things would get uglier from here, but I also knew I was ready. I thought after Carr's vague threats, they'd quiet down and find another way. They didn't. Just 2 days later, when I came back from the grocery store and lifted the garage door, Benjamin's gray pickup was parked right out front. Carrie stood next to it, arms crossed, eyes like steel. I stopped and left the bags in the car. I wasn't going to start the show before I even stepped inside. Benjamin stepped forward, voice tight. "Mom, we need a serious talk." I looked at him without a word. Carrie cut in. "You're hurting this family if you don't keep helping. Olivia will suffer."
Do you want your granddaughter growing up in hardship? I drew a long breath. Olivia again, the familiar shield they used to stab my conscience. I slipped my keys into my pocket and said, "If you truly care about Olivia, learn to support your own family. A grandma can't raise a child for its parents." Benjamin's face twisted. He moved closer, voice low but boiling. "You're selfish. Your whole life you preached sacrifice for family, and now you're turning your back?" I looked him in the eye. "No, Benjamin, I did sacrifice for years. You never valued it. From now on, I simply won't sacrifice anymore." Carrie shot him a glance, then switched to a syrupy tone that sounded fake. "Mom, maybe someone's been influencing you. Or you're confused. Think again. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. We just want you to be happy." I let out a rough laugh that even sounded strange to me. Happy? For years you've taken every dollar, every hour of sleep, every small joy I had. If that's love, then my happiness is dirt cheap. Carrie's face went pale. The sugarcoat was gone. She hissed, "Fine, if this is your choice, you'll face the consequences." Benjamin tugged her toward the truck. Before getting in, he turned and gave me a look that wasn't a son's, but a stranger's. "You'll regret this." The truck pulled away, leaving a gray stripe of dust on the road. I stood still, fists clenched. I knew those weren't just angry words. They were a warning. That afternoon, I opened my notebook again. I wrote, "Today, their true faces showed. No more circling. No more masks. They've made me the enemy." When I finished and closed it, my heart was still heavy. I had prepared myself for anger and blame, but I had never imagined my own son could look at me with such a cold gaze. The next day, I stopped by the church. After the service, the pastor walked over and asked, "Gloria, are you all right? You looked deep in thought." I hesitated for a moment, then gave a brief rundown of the situation. He nodded, sadness in his eyes. Family, when blinded by money, can be crueler than strangers. But don't leave yourself alone. Seek support and protection. Those words echoed in my head as I drove home. I knew the gentle phase was over.
Now I had to be ready for heavier blows. That afternoon, I unexpectedly received an envelope in the mail. My name was clearly written on the front, but the handwriting was messy. I opened it. Inside was a printed page, basically an ultimatum.
If you don't continue financial support, we will be forced to pursue legal measures to protect the family's interests. Underneath were Benjamin and Kari's signatures. I sat there stunned, the paper trembling in my hand. So the threats had become a document. I was no longer just facing tears or scolding. I was facing a real scheme. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room under the warm glow of a table lamp. Memories unspooled. Benjamin's graduation, his wedding to Kari, the day I handed them money for their apartment, the nights I stayed up trying to juggle their debts. It all boiled down to a painful conclusion. To them, I wasn't a mother. I was a mobile bank. And when the bank closed, they treated me like a traitor. But mixed with the pain was a small ray of light. I realized the truth had surfaced. No more illusions, no more faint hope that my love would be returned. That stark truth, harsh as it was, set me free. The next day I called my old attorney, Mr. Harris, the one who helped with my will when Robert was alive. I told him about the letter. He was silent for a moment, then said, "Gloria, this is serious. You need to gather every piece of evidence. Bank statements, texts, letters. We have to prepare for the worst-case scenario." I nodded, heart pounding. I was no longer in a vague defensive stance. I had officially stepped into a battle. Early evening, while I was organizing papers, the doorbell rang. I glanced out the window. Benjamin and Kari again. This time, I didn't answer. I stood behind the curtain, quietly watching. They knocked, called my name, then started shouting when I didn't respond. Kari yelled, "Mom, if you don't come out, we'll record a video and send it to everyone to show you're abandoning your kids and grandchild." I stayed still, my heart aching, but I didn't move. After nearly 10 minutes, they left, the front lawn stamped with shoe prints. I sank into a chair and covered my face. The hurt flooded in, but within it a strange pride rose up. I hadn't opened the door. I hadn't caved. That night I added another line to my notebook. When they stop hiding, I see everything clearly. Their eyes, their tone, every word is a knife. I'd rather take a real knife than live forever in fake sweetness. I closed the notebook and exhaled. I knew this was only the beginning.
The next morning, I pulled back the curtains and saw a familiar figure watering flowers across the street. It was Florence, my neighbor of more than 10 years. We'd never been close, just the occasional hello at church or the grocery store. But today, for some reason, the way she looked over at me felt like she was asking a question. I forced a smile and waved. Florence shut off the hose, crossed the street, and stopped at my fence. She is about my age, silver hair, still spry. "Gloria, I heard a commotion at your place yesterday. Is everything all right?" Her voice was gentle but full of concern. I froze. I hadn't planned to share family matters with anyone, but the clarity in her eyes eased something in me. I opened the gate and invited her onto the porch. We sat on the old wooden bench, morning light filtering through the leaves, scattering gold across the table. I slowly told her everything, being shut out of the wedding, celebration, canceling the transfers, Benjamin and Carrie showing up to yell at me, and the threatening letter in the mail. Florence listened in silence, nodding along to each detail. When I finished, she gripped my hand, warm and steady. "Gloria, You're not alone. I've been through the same thing. My son tried to have me declared incapacitated to take this house. I know what it's like to be seen as a wallet by your own blood. My chest tightened. Someone understood my pain that well. Florence told me that 5 years ago, her son and daughter-in-law pressured her relentlessly. They kept borrowing for a restaurant, then blamed her when it failed. It escalated to hiring a lawyer and preparing a guardianship petition. Thankfully, Florence found a strong attorney and neighbors willing to testify. She won. Since then, she learned how to put up fences, even with her own child. Listening to her, I felt both horrified and strengthened. I asked, "How did you get through it? Didn't you feel guilty?" She looked straight at me, resolute. Of course I cried until I couldn't breathe night after night, but I realized being a mother doesn't mean supporting your kids for life. They grow up, start families, and must stand on their own feet. Love doesn't mean unconditional financing. Her words rang through me like a bell. I saw how far I'd gone down the road of sacrifice. So far I'd forgotten the limit. We sat a while longer. Florence offered, "If you need it, I'll testify for you. I've seen Benjamin and Carrie show up and raise their voices at you many times. The neighborhood knows it too. Don't be afraid. You have witnesses." Tears pricked my eyes as I squeezed her hand. "Florence, you're my lifesaver. I never imagined I'd find an ally right across the street." She smiled kindly.
We're mothers, and sometimes mothers have to remind each other that we deserve protection too. That evening, I went home and opened his Elm, the bank files again. This time, those cold numbers weren't just evidence of my foolishness. I saw them like bullets, and Florence had just placed a shield in my hands. I began sorting everything neatly, dating, clipping in the texts, printing emails. As my hands moved faster, a certainty rose in me. I'm not alone anymore. 2 days later, Benjamin came again. I looked out the window and saw him with Carrie, and this time a man I didn't recognize. I didn't open the door. I picked up the phone and called Florence. She said, "I'll be right over. Stay calm, Gloria." When she arrived, the trio outside looked thrown off. Benjamin tried for a steady voice. "Mom, this is our legal advisor. He just wants to talk and find a solution for everyone." I stood behind the locked door and didn't open it. From beside me, Florence spoke up loud and clear. "I'm the neighbor. I've witnessed enough disturbances here. If you keep harassing her, I'll call the police immediately." The air shifted at once. Carrie yanked Benjamin's arm. "Let's go. Standing here is pointless." I exhaled shakily, my hands still trembling. Florence laid a hand on my shoulder. "See, sometimes just one witness is enough to stop them from crossing the line." That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. In my dreams, I walked through a bright garden, surrounded by the laughter of older women. I knew it was the image of community strength Florence had just opened up for me. The next morning, I went to Florence's with a homemade pie. She opened the door surprised. "Gloria, you didn't have to." I smiled. "It's not about courtesy. I just wanted to say that because of you, I found peace again in my own home." We sat together eating pie, sipping tea, and talking like old friends. I told her about the good memories buried under years of financial strain. Saying them out loud felt like release. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "Today I gained an ally. Florence, the woman who understands a pain I thought only I carried." Maybe this journey isn't just about protecting assets. Maybe it's about learning to stand with other women, stronger together. After the day Florence stood up for me in front of Benjamin and Carrie, I could finally breathe easier. But I knew their silence was only temporary, like a calm lake with currents swirling underneath. Sure enough, a few days later, I got another letter. This time, not Benjamin's messy scribble, but a clean printout with a law firm seal. In it, they claimed I showed signs of mental instability, requiring supervision to prevent financial risk. They also hinted at the legal rights of direct heirs. Plainly put, they were building a case to haul me into court and force me to hand over control of my finances.
When I finished reading, a chill ran through me. But instead of panicking, I folded the letter and set it on the table. I called Mr. Harris, the attorney I'd trusted for years. "Harris, I need you to look at this." An hour later, he was there. After reading, he frowned. "They're using the classic playbook, Gloria. I've seen it many times. They want to paint you as a paranoid elder who can't manage her affairs." "We need to get ahead of it," I asked quietly. "What do you suggest?" Harris met my eyes. "We'll arrange an independent assessment by doctors and specialists I know personally. It's a second opinion, both to document your capacity and to shut down their tactic. When we're in court, these experts will be your wall." I exhaled. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone in the dark. 2 days later, I met the psychologist and internist Harris had lined up. The evaluation took place in a bright room filled with natural light from big windows. Dr. Moore, a middle-aged woman with round frames, asked me a long series of questions, from dates and figures to feelings and problem solving. I answered clearly. When she asked me to total monthly expenses, I immediately recalled the exact figure, $47,600 over 5 years, because it's carved into me like a mark on stone. When we finished, she smiled. "Mrs. Gloria, honestly, your mind is sharper than many younger people. I'll write a detailed report. No one can twist this truth." Hearing that, my eyes stung. Not because I doubted myself, but because someone outside finally saw the truth about me, a completely lucid woman who had simply endured exploitation for too long. As Harris and I left the clinic, he said quietly, "We've landed our first counterpunch, but prepare yourself. Benjamin and Carrie won't stop. They'll use harder psychological tactics to make you cave. Stay firm." I nodded, my heart heavy. Sure enough, that night my phone rang nonstop. This time, it wasn't shouting. It was messages dripping with staged emotion. Carrie wrote, "Mom, do you remember when you held Olivia for her naps? She keeps calling for Grandma. She cried when she heard you're upset with us. Please don't turn your back on the family." I bit my lip. I knew Olivia was too little to understand any of this. That message wasn't my granddaughter's voice. It was a ploy Carrie had crafted. Then a text from Benjamin. "Mom, I just drove past your house. The lights were on, but you didn't open the door. I know you saw me. I don't want us to become strangers. I regret so much." I sat by the window, watching the street light wash the sidewalk. A part of me wanted to open the door and run to him, but then I remembered the statements and the cold look on his face when he said, "You'll regret this." I knew those remorseful lines were just another tactic. The next day, I told Florence everything. She sat across from me in the living room, took a sip of tea, then smiled slightly. "Gloria, they're trying everything. 1 minute it's threats, the next it's sweet talk. That's classic psychological warfare. Make you waver until you can't tell what's real. But remember, the truth is what you've seen with your own eyes, not what they type in a text." I nodded, feeling steadier. Florence added, "Keep every text, email, and letter. Every line will turn into evidence of manipulation. Don't delete anything." I did as she said. I printed all the messages and filed them. Each page felt like a puzzle piece, exposing the truth. That afternoon, while I was sorting papers, I got a call from an unknown number. The person said they were a social worker and that they'd received a report. I was showing signs of confusion and needed a safety check. I went cold. Clearly, Benjamin and Carrie had filed a report with the authorities. I stayed calm and said, "I'm sorry, I won't answer any questions without my attorney present."
The caller sounded surprised, mumbled a few words, then hung up. I called Harris right away and told him what happened. He mused. "Good, Gloria. You did the right thing."
What happens next will surprise you. Continue the story in part 2. The link is waiting for you in the description. Like this video and subscribe so you never miss the next twist.